Hello, welcome. I hope you can hear me just fine. Welcome to the space. Thank you for showing up. And I'm also going live right now too. Right now I'll be controlling the tech as well as telling the story. So I just wanted to briefly share, since I'll be doing this live on Facebook and then also doing it here in the Zoom. So I appreciate you showing up. I'll be facilitating the space here, just handling both the speaking and also handling the text. So if there's questions, just wait till the end. And I just ask that everyone, whoever joins in, I know that there's only a few of us here right now, but I will mention again periodically, is to have some mutual respect in the comments or in the chat if you want. And also keep in mind too, safety. If you are tuning in, please do remember to use a hands-free options if you're operating a motor vehicle, if you're listening in, just to keep in mind the safety piece. But I wanted to also introduce myself briefly. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate that. Yat Erin Dixon Yinsha, Kintlachitni Nishla, Tachitni Bahastin, Kia Ani Dashache, Nakaidane Dashanella, Tsebadai Da Nasha. I'm coming from, I was born in Shiprock, New Mexico, and that's where I'm tuning in live right now. And I'm of the Red House clan, born for Red Streak Through the Water. I am Dene Navajo, also on the Navajo Nation. I invited you all to the space, and I'm opening up the space to Facebook Live as well. And I invited folks to come and join me and experience the time of storytelling. Storytelling for me is not only just an art, but it's also a way to explain the world around us, like the changes of the seasons or the cycles of life. In many ways, it's a medicine that links thoughts to words, when thoughts are filtered through the heart before the words leave the lips. So I kind of feel as though storytelling is a medicine in that way. And also telling my story in hopes that somebody might resonate or find some inspiration from what I share. And also to honor the parts of me that I have been, that I've neglected or ignored in the past. So I want to also pay homage to that. And lastly, I also wanted to mention, as we are entering this space, to also honor the balance of what is happening today. In solstice, winter solstice. And I just wanted to also honor the beauty of the harmony and balance of nature as our true teacher. So this is also the reason I picked this specific day to share this story, is because I wanted to, I kind of see it almost as if this is the new beginning of a new cycle, if you will. And it's the perfect time to sort of achieve, like I said, that harmony and balance. So hopefully today some of that will resonate, trigger something within you. But that's the space that I wanted to share today. So we'll just take a few minutes, and this is mostly just for me right now to kind of get in the zone and to kind of shake the nerves. But I ask you to join with me, just a really brief opening meditation. And this is going to be just very brief, very informal. And I just ask just to participate in this small, brief moment of meditation. And I invite you to sit anyhow you feel comfortable. If you'd like to close your eyes, if you're safe enough to be able to close your eyes, please do so. Otherwise, just gaze softly or gently downwardly in front of you. And in this moment, let's take a moment to just honor the breath, whatever capacity that is for you right now. You can breathe however you feel comfortable. And also breathe. Inhale through the nose. Exhale through the mouth. Giving yourself a moment to notice. If you're breathing through your nose, noticing which nostril is open, if they're both flowing freely. However you feel comfortable in this moment to breathe, but just notice. Perhaps noticing the rise and the fall of the shoulders, the expansion of the chest. Keeping your focus there in the chest. I invite you to just be there for a moment and feel the expansion of the lungs, and then the emptying of the lungs, creating a small space around the heart. Emptying your cup just for this moment. Whatever happened before you came to the space, letting it be. Whatever may come after this space, letting it be. I ask you to just focus on your breath, bringing yourself to this moment right here. Allowing thoughts to come and go if they do, not lingering on one too long. Creating this soft space here to share, to learn, to pick up what may serve you, or perhaps even just leave behind what doesn't. In this moment, breathing in fully, breathing out slowly and with intention. Two more breath cycles like this, at your own pace, just noticing. And with the last exhale, feeling yourself again, noticing your body in the chair, the space around you. Checking in with yourself and seeing if there's anything that may have shifted with that breathing. Slowly allowing your eyes to flutter open. Coming back to the space. Thank you so much for allowing me that time to do that. I feel like a lot of times that actually helps me more than anything, so I appreciate that. Again, thank you for coming in, and if you were just coming here, you definitely settle in. I just started the storytelling. So when I started to kind of look into how I was going to tell this story and how I wanted to come through, it took me back to when I was about 30, 31. I remember this conversation I had with myself in the mirror. I had this conversation. I looked in the mirror and I said, I noticed I was 31. You know, I was no longer as young as I thought. So when I was 30, I had this moment and I looked in the mirror and I said, Erin, I see the wrinkles on your face. I see the lines, the good smile lines, though at least those are good. But then I said, we have to be okay with time passing. And then I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, yeah, that's a deal, but only if we're learning something as the time passes. And I took that promise to myself that I made into a decision, and I decided to become more mindful about what I listened to, what I read, and even how I thought, which kind of led me into a space to discover and learn more about myself. That decision that I made, that promise that I made into the decision became the way for me to discover my true self. But keep in mind, this was not my intention right away. At first, it was kind of just a fun thing to learn new things online, read books, take classes. But then a shift happened. So a funny little birthday promise that turned into a decision of allowing time to pass, but not without learning something, led me to begin my journey of my own self. So around this time, when I was about 31, I was living in Minneapolis. I call it the Minneapolis era. I stayed there about 9 years. But around this time, I was on that tip, and I ran into something that was really transformative for me. And it helped me to shift from a space of learning outside things, of books and subjects, but actually turning inward and learning myself, which I got connected with a brilliant organization called the Center for Mind Body Medicine. And I took a training in 2020 in Minneapolis, thankfully for the job that I was working with, which was working in the Indigenous community in the Twin Cities. And I was so blessed to be invited. So I took the class, I took the training, and it was the most transformative thing that I had experienced. And of course, it was right at the time of COVID. So it was 2020, and I went ahead and I took the tools because I was so about learning. I wanted to learn. So I said, this is a certification and my work is paying for it. I'm going to go for it. So I went for it. And it was during the time of the civil unrest. It was during the time of Brother George Floyd losing his life in public and being murdered. And all of the civil unrest. It was and COVID. It was a very scary time. So I'm really grateful for having that training because it gave me tools for managing my emotions and tapping into my unconscious. So it was a really transformative thing for me. And even to this day, I still do this work. So it's mind body medicine skills. Practicing and teaching at the same time was amazing for me. So that first experience really shifted my mindset of learning to turn it inwards. So I learned these tools through this training, and I felt like this learning of these tools really tried to help me break down these barriers of sort of of knowing that there was something deeper, but then I didn't know quite how to get there. So these tools that I learned through this training helped me feel like it led me to a space where I started to dig more. I wanted to learn more about myself. I wanted to learn more about culture. I wanted to learn more about ceremony, where I came from, my origins. And I feel like those tools I learned in that training helped my body to remember. For instance, there's this practice that I remember that really changed a lot of things for me in the moment. It's a practice called shaking and dancing. And when I first did it, it was wild because I was so afraid. I wept, and the reason I was so afraid, now that I look back on it and I can understand, is the reason I was so afraid to do after I did that, because when you're shaking, your body gets in this dissonance mode where your whole body is vibrating and shaking and moving, and you don't have time to think, and it clears your brain, and you're in this space of discovery, unknown. And for me at the moment, back then in 2020, it was so unknown to me who I was really. I was barely cracking the surface. So when I was there and I experienced that practice, I felt this space in me open up, and it was so foreign to me because that feeling was a feeling of liberation. It was a feeling of freedom. It was something that I knew within my blood and my DNA was far from reach, that it wasn't experienced by me and my lineage for a long time. So in that moment of practicing that shaking and moving, it broke the surface. And from there, I just couldn't get enough. I wanted to learn more about why I felt this way. I wanted to learn more about my family history. And it pushed me to a place to learn more about ceremony too. which was really such a blessing because connecting with culture through what I was doing for a living as a job is a huge blessing. I learned a lot from many teachers in the Twin Cities community, and I continue to practice all of the tools that I've learned from them and from the Center for Mind Body Medicine. I had learned about my intuition a little bit more, but I also still had some difficulty trusting it at the time. So this was back in 2020, just experiencing breaking the surface of really truly introspection. So this was around the time, one morning I woke up from a dream, and so this was around the time, probably I think it was around the summer of 2021 perhaps, or it was after COVID, so this was after COVID, maybe 2022. But I had woke up one morning from a dream, and this dream was so vivid, and this is going to be part of kind of just sharing my own story. And this is what I love about the storytelling, is that I can share it from my narrative and my point of view freely. So one morning I had woke from a dream, and this dream was so vivid. In my dream, I saw this rectangular shaped structure, and it was so different looking to me. And as I studied it and I looked at it from this top view, I noticed that it was like long rods or long sticks, and they were bound together, and they made this sort of rectangular shaped structure. And I realized it was made of sticks and long rods bound together. I saw a rectangular shaped structure. And as I looked at it, suddenly it began to shake and move from side to side so quickly and so fast. It wasn't violent or anything, but it was like vibrating and moving, and it was so noticeable. And that was the last vision I had from my dream. And as I woke up, I was like, wow, that was so cool. That was so cool. So I wrote it down and I drew it in my journal. And later on that same day, I received a text message from a very dear friend of mine in Minneapolis, and she had let me know that there was a ceremony happening. She says, ceremony happening tonight. She says, bring an offering with your intention and a potluck item, food item. And so I was like, okay, ceremony tonight. I've never been to a ceremony. I asked her what it was, and she told me she said it was called Shake Tent Ceremony, which is a ceremony conducted by Anishinaabe up north in Minnesota. And I've been to a shake ceremony before, but this is my first time forever really being involved with it. So I'm so grateful for my friend sending me that text message, because when I had arrived, I went ahead and I went. I didn't know what to expect, but I went. And so I had arrived, and I had my offering, I had my intention, and I sat and I talked with the medicine man. And as I was standing in line, I was kind of looking around, and I saw the structure we were standing in, and it was exactly like it was in my dream that I had saw. It was a rectangular longhouse, and it was bound together, and the long rods, and it was bound together on the corners. And I was like, whoa, this is wild. And I got the chills. And the next thing I knew, it was my turn to sit and talk with the medicine man. And so I sat with him, and I told him why I had come. I told him I had gotten invited, and I also told him about my dream. And we talked. And I said, I've never been to a shake tent ceremony. I don't know what to expect. I said, I've been to one before, but I didn't participate because I was afraid. And he took me by the hand, and we sat and we chat, and he told me there's nothing to be afraid of. He says, you see that up there? And he pointed up at the top of the little shake tent that was shaped like this. And up at the very top, was a small little springling cedar tree right up at the top. And he says, there's nothing to be afraid of. He says, that is the master of the ceremony. He says, that's the master, and everything comes through that tree, that spirit, and all I do is interpret. He says, so there's nothing to be afraid of. And I thought, wow, cool. Okay, I'm pretty cool with the cedar tree, so I don't feel so scared. So he was like, I told him my intentions. So what I had come to the thought of it for all day, that I had thought of what I was going to bring my intention to. And my intention was, I told him there, I said, I want to know how to become reunited with my true self. And I also want to know my real name from before I came to this world. And the medicine man, he held my hand, and I remember looking in his eyes, and I just felt like everything I spoke to him, he believed, and everything that I said, he received it. And I remember looking in his eyes, and they were so kind. And then he said, good, that's good. It sounds good. So I was like, I feel okay. I got up and I went. The ceremony started. And what I did in that moment was, it was dark. So it's dark in the ceremony, in the shake tent. They close out the lights, and all of the light was closed out, and it was dark. And I remember standing there, and the drum was shaking, or the drum was beating, and the rattles were being shook, and I could hear that tent shaking. And I remembered the practices that I had done with the Center for Mind Body Medicine. And so as I heard the music and the drum pumping, and it was in the dark, I closed my eyes and I started to shake. Just as I did that first time, that I had felt so afraid afterwards, but in that moment, that's what I felt like I needed to do. So I began to shake right there in the ceremony. And as I shook, I remember just these tears falling down my face. And this presence came in that moment. And it was a presence. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't anything like that. It was a presence that came and told me, right here, near the drum, is where you need to be. Right here. This is where you'll find yourself. And in that moment, I knew that was truth, and I felt it with everything inside of me. And I stopped shaking, and then the drum stopped, and I opened my eyes, and I just felt this rush of truth over me, of like, this is where I need to be. I need to discover myself near the drum. I need to discover myself in ceremony, in the lodge. And so in that moment, I took that as my truth. And I was so shocked by what I had felt in that moment, and what that presence brought to me, and that clear message. I was so shook. I was like, whoa, that was wild. So I ended up just going home that night, and I totally forgot to ask the medicine man what my true name was, if he had gotten it. And so I just went home. A few weeks later, maybe a month or so later, I returned back to that site again, but this time I went on a sort of whim. It was a full night. It was a full moon night, and I was in the backyard of my apartment in Minneapolis, and I was just in the backyard. It was beautiful, and it was summertime, and it was warm, and I was standing with my bare feet in the dirt, and I could smell the dirt, and I could feel the warm breeze in the air, and the moon was shining so bright, and I could hear the wind and all of the crickets. And I was standing there as I was just kind of in a meditative mode. And then suddenly I looked at the moon, and I swear I heard, I may have imagined, I don't know, but I heard the crickets say, move, go now. And I was like, what? And I looked at the moon, and something just told me in that moment, go back to that lodge. And so I was like, no, this is crazy. This is crazy. And as I tried to sort of resist it, like the crickets started to get louder, and the wind started to whip, And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go. So I just grabbed my side chick, grabbed my skirt. I hurry up and grabbed a fruit bowl that I had in the fridge, and I headed that way. And I didn't know what to expect. I just knew in that moment that something was calling me to go back to that site. So that night I had shown up, and they were doing ceremony. It was full moon, and they were doing a sweat, the duty sun. And I hadn't been in a sweat forever, since maybe before I was like a young child. So this is the first time I had went as an adult. And so I went and I trusted it. And so we get in, and I'm experiencing the sweat lodge, and it was so awesome. It was funny too, because when we got in there, I sitting there and I introduced myself. And then as soon as I kind of stopped talking and it went on to the next person, I heard this cricket right behind me. I don't know if it was in the sweat or it was right outside, but I remember in that moment thinking like, yes, I made it here. Thank you for checking up. It was kind of funny because that cricket just came out of nowhere. So I knew in that moment that I was in the right place, and I just trusted it. But I was there, and we went through the process, and then right about, if anybody has been to sweat, right about the fourth door. So we opened the fourth door. They brought in some more stones, and as I was sitting there, I had been praying, and I was just kind of there, and I was kind of like, a little bit like, I'm glad I came, but what's spectacular is going to happen? So anywho, I'm sitting there, and as the rocks are being brought in, I'm looking at them, and they're glowing this beautiful color. It's like reddish golden color, and it's dark in there, so you can see the rocks. And as they're bringing them in, I saw them, and we greet them, and they come in, and I was sitting there looking at the rock, and in the moment I thought in my head, I was like, gosh, wow, look at you, you're shining so beautifully, with so much knowledge of the earth before and probably after we're all gone. You have so much information, and you're shining so beautifully. And as I was looking at that rock, I was gazing at it, and then again this presence comes over me, and I'm looking at the rock, and it says, you shine the same way. And I was like, what? I swear, if the light was on in that sweat lodge, I would have been blushing. I said, what? I said, hold on, Erin, you're tripping. You're sitting here having a conversation with a stone. This is too much. And so I sat there and I said, okay, yeah, that's funny. I shine the same way. How funny. And so I sat there, and the fourth door goes down, and it goes dark. And I'm sitting there, and then a voice in the darkness comes out and says, who here doesn't have their Indian name? And it got really quiet, and nobody said anything. And I sat there, and I kind of was like, I don't think he's talking about me. There's no way he's going to be talking about me. And so I didn't say anything. And then he says again, who here hasn't had their Indians, who hasn't had their spirit name, their real name? And nobody said anything. And then finally I broke the silence, and I said, me. He was all, who is that? In the dark. And I said, it's me, Erin. And then he says, Erin, there's a name for you here. And I wish I could pronounce it in Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, but I don't know quite how to pronounce it, but it translates. He says, your name is Good Shining Stone Woman. He says it was delivered here. That's the name you're going to use when you talk to your ancestors, when you make your offerings, when you pray. That is your name. He says they know you by that name. Use it. And so I said, all right, good shining stone woman. And when he said that, I like had to repeat it in my mind. And then in that moment, I thought, oh, that stone just told me that I shine the same way. which was pretty awesome. And I kind of was shook in that moment. And I took that as a confirmation that my conversation with that stone was not totally wild and crazy, that it was real. And I appreciate that person who was holding and facilitating the sweat lodge to share that name with me in the moment, because I had went back and I didn't even know that I had went back for that specific reason. I had just trusted in the moment to go back. So when I had heard that name in the dark, I felt really, I felt confirmation for myself that I need to start trusting my intuition more. And so when I heard that name and we finished with the ceremony, I went and I gave my tobacco and I put my offering out, and I really sat with that. And so good shining stone woman, that's where that name comes from. And so I honored that name that night. And so when I went home, mind you, again, it was the full moon. And that night I had dreamt vividly of something still yet uncovered. So that night I had gotten my name, and I went home, and I had this really wild night of dreams, and it was just in and out with so many messages, so many vivid things. And the next morning I wrote them all down, and there's this specific piece that I wanted to share that kind of would segue into sort of the second part of the story, which would be my second name. But so that night I had went home after ceremony, after I got my name, Good Shining Stone Woman. I went home and I went to bed, and I dreamt very, very vividly. And I have a journal entry here that I wanted to share, and it just sounds so, I just wanted to share it really quickly. So this was from the night that I had gotten my name. So in a dream journal, so the moon had lassoed me. In an instant, my eyes were shocked by the vastness and wonders of the living ether, colors and auras indescribable by word for even the keenest dreamer. Every direction I turned my gaze, I saw no end and no beginning, happening all at once. The cosmic collective creating symphonies of prismatic facets, each reverberating the powers of wisdom. Suddenly, I became aware that I could not see or feel my body, but somehow still held by the dark coolness of the sun. Spinning, whirling, twirling, and then I woke. And when I woke, I knew that there was something more that I had to discover, because just as that moon in my dream, there's two sides to myself. And I felt like, yes, the moon shows one side to us all the time, but there's also a side that she keeps for herself, and we don't get to see. And so in that moment when I woke up from that dream, I knew that there was something more that I had to discover. And so that will have to wait until part 2, which is entitled Double Spirit, the Changing One. And that one will include a bit more of where I went from that. So we'll start off from there, from that dream to the next. But I thank you all from Facebook land for joining me. If you have any questions or whatever, feel free to type them in the message board or anything you want. If you have any questions at all. And then also I'm doing Zoom right here. And I'm wondering too if anybody has any questions or comments. Feel free to ask. Thank you so much, Caspian. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate you all who Zoomed in with me. Appreciate you all. I love you all for coming and supporting me. And I hope you all were able to catch the last part of that, but I'm going to go ahead and place the second part of the changing one right here in the chat for everybody to register. And also stay tuned, folks on Facebook. If you're not following me already, go ahead and follow me. I'll be doing another series after Double Spirit. The series coming after Double Spirit will be entitled The Alchemist's Third Eye Accounts, which is going to be a collection of poetry, a collection of stories and dreams of third eye accounts. So it's going to be really interesting, and I look forward to that too. So if you also feel like you want to share a story and be a part of the Alchemist third eye accounts, which would be including, like I said again, dreams, sharing visions or meditative visions. So that's kind of coming up in the future. But the next series is going to be the second part to Double Spirit, which is going to be called The Changing One. So thank you all for joining me. And I don't think I have any questions in the chat or anything. I appreciate everybody coming. Thank you so much for coming and sharing my story, listening in. And just for now, since we have just a few minutes, I think that, and I don't have any questions at all, so we'll just close out. I feel like it's appropriate just to close out with a little sort of breathing together. So I think, thank you all. Thanks, Mallory, for the comment. Let's take a moment for a second here and just give ourselves a moment to kind of shift out of this space, and also for me too, because I know everybody here might have other things you need to do. So just taking a moment here, take some breaths together. Breathing in, however you feel comfortable. You can certainly join me in with the soft belly in through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Keeping the belly nice and soft and relaxed. Bring yourself back again to the body, noticing anything that may have come up. And as we share this breath together, I'd like to extend to you, from my heart space to yours, my gratitude for your support in this moment. Thank you so much. And I'll also share with you, as you breathe, a brief little affirmation. Taking in a nice full breath, focusing on my words. And if you'd like to, you can say them silently to yourself. As I walk forward, I will step into that which will give me solutions to my problems. As I walk forward, I will step into that which will give me solutions to my problems. Let me walk by Spirit. Lead me into places aligned with my highest purpose. Let me walk in Spirit. Lead me into places aligned with my highest purpose. And let me recognize these things. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. Thank you so much, my relatives, for joining me. I really appreciate your time. And you all have a safe evening. And we'll see you again next time when we meet again for the changing one. I love you all. Have